Welcome to Google for our 6th AI event. This one I'm particularly excited about because it is bringing us, we're going to be talking a lot today about things that are bringing us very close to Mike and my original vision for Multiply when we started the company nearly a decade ago now. But we're now at the point where AI has moved so far in the direction we've needed it to, and we've actually moved so far in terms of the way customers today, clients today are interacting with technology. As with previous events, there is a Slido. So if you go to slido.com, I'll put this back up in a moment. But if you go to that particular, if you put in that particular access code, you can submit questions. The last 6, 9, 12 months or so, the way I've personally been using AI tools has really evolved. Like I've really sensed them advancing in how useful they've been. I've really, and like I guess the culmination of a lot of this is that I'm just using them a lot more. And there is some very fundamental aspect to advice, to helping people with their money, to guidance, to whatever kind of area you're operating in, which is really getting to know people. Like in order to really, really help people in the best way possible, you first need to get to the point, and this is what great advisors do, by the way. They ask fantastic questions, they really get to the bottom of what drives people, what they value. So I thought in terms of introducing today, I'd go through a little bit of exercise as to how well the tools I've been using have got to know me, just as a little bit of a thought exercise. So I did ask it, questions about what I truly, deeply care about. This is, cinnamon buns, why not? But obviously this is what I care. This is, I guess, what I care about short term. Like the context of this is we do mini bake-offs in our family. And I haven't won one yet, so there you go. But it is a family of 4. Like it picked up that I deeply care about my family and my dog, which it subsequently added on. But it's going way further. Like this is kind of the short-term stuff. This is like, perhaps a bit tongue-in-cheek. It's going further. It's really like, the things I really care about, right? So when I use all these AI tools. I get help from it around figuring out what to do with my fantasy football team. I ask it questions about football. This is something I deeply care about. This is something I'd be wanting to spend my time on and perhaps even resources on into the future, right? Getting an Arsenal season ticket, that kind of thing. This is an interesting one. So I have an account that I kind of use with my wife. We're looking to do some home renovations, and we've been using these tools to help us navigate that. I mean, look, this is not me going to these AI tools asking it for help about my future. This is really looking to see what it's picked up from the conversations I've been having, from the memory, from all of that context that it's been gathering. Stuff that, if we were having this conversation 5, 10 years ago, would be the sorts of things you would almost like back a bank to be able to understand, through spending habits or whatever it may be. This is like another whole dimension to that. It knows I love to travel. I asked loads of questions about traveling. This is the Dalaman coast in Turkey, so I'm hoping to go there quite soon. And now let's go on to the kind of more kind of personal aspects to people. So I'm sure many of you have already done this around going into something like ChatGPT and asking about what it perceives to be your strengths, your weaknesses, that kind of thing. Obviously, there's a whole set of strengths, and I must have lost the slide with all my weaknesses, unfortunately. So look at that, it didn't show up. But you can go deeper. Like great advisors go deeper. Great advisors work out what really makes people tick. It works out their values. It works out what they deeply care about, what matters to them, how they want their futures to unfold. And I'm not saying we're there yet, but I'm saying there is a direction of travel where a lot of these experiences are getting deeper and deeper. And this is, something like Gemini, ChatGPT, they're quite generic. They're not trained or focused on helping people with their money as of yet. These are the sorts of things, these are the sorts of insights you can derive from these sorts of tools. And where do we feel at Multiply this is going to take us? Like ultimately, we built the company to help people achieve their goals and improve their financial well-being. And we believe it's just going to make us so much more effective. And our partner firms that we work with, so much more effective at that point at helping people. Because now we're not just asking when do you want to retire, how much do you want when you retire. We're not just asking, very shallow questions around people's futures, around what matters to people. We are now getting that ability to go much deeper and to forge that much deeper understanding, which helps us figure out the recommendations to make, but also how to put people's financial plans in action. It's helping us figure out how to explain and position financial plans, what metaphors to use. There's so much depth and richness that comes out of this particular capability. Which brings me on to the agenda for today. So, I've just welcomed you all, and then we've got a keynote from Denish from Google. So he is going to be talking about learnings that have been brought over from Google, from other industries, around this topic of injecting the very kind of human elements and making these experiences more human. We've then, unfortunately, John has had to kind of step out for personal reasons, but he is going to be doing a recording for us. John is the UK MD of a company called Wysa, and they have an AI digital therapist that they have launched. It is prescribed by the NHS. It's doing really well. It's out in the US as well. And to me, therapy is like pretty much the most human of human services, right? Like if you were to tell me 5-10 years ago, there will be something in your pocket, some kind of AI experience to provide therapy for people, I'd have thought you were bonkers. But here we are today, and there's some really great results from all of that work being done. We've then got our very own Mike, my co-founder and CTO. He's going to be taking you through some of the stuff we've been working on, some of the stuff we've been thinking through around humanizing digital advice. We've then got a quick coffee break, and then a panel discussion with Bianca from Google, Matt from Monzo, Mike, Aritra from Lloyds, and I'll be moderating that. And then afterwards, we've probably got about 15 minutes to half an hour of networking.
So yeah, Multiply. I think most of you know who we are, but in case you don't, we are an AI company now that is quite long in the tooth for AI companies. We're 10 years old. The AI originally was kind of riding the original wave of AlphaGo, the kind of technology that revolution that we saw coming as part of that. But what was really challenging at the time was that although there were chatbots, although there were sort of decision tree approaches, there wasn't really the capabilities to do what we wanted to do, which was essentially put a human financial advisor into a digital format. And a lot of you obviously will have been here because you're excited about the future, you've read about LLMs, you've played around with ChatGPT or Gemini. You know that this technology is fundamentally different than the kind of chatbots that we had when we started the company. But as we'll get on to, there are some real challenges with actually delivering this in a regulated industry. I mean, the challenge is delivering it in non-regulated industries, but an industry where you, in our case is finance, but this goes for the legal industry and it also goes for the healthcare industry, where there are really serious consequences if you get it wrong. In finance, people can go to prison if you get it wrong. It's that serious. Although it doesn't happen very often, this is a real threat that senior people looking to deploy this technology actually face. So something that we've been thinking over the last couple of years, ever since this technology burst onto the scene, is how do you actually put it out there in a way that doesn't make your compliance officer have some sort of panic attack by trying to understand the risks. So just a reminder for those who are less familiar with the advice industry and finance industry in general, what are we actually trying to do here? So 9% of the UK's population benefit from paid financial advice, which is really quite small, given that we live in an era where you could no longer count on working, a regular job from, the time you leave school to the time you retire. That automatically, giving you enough to buy a house or guaranteeing you some sort of final salary pension. That era doesn't exist. If you want to retire, if you want to buy a house, if you want to really make the most of the money that comes in your pay packet, you need to have an understanding of the financial concepts behind everything. You need to actually engage with what is a pension, what is an ISA, what are these things, how do I put it all together, how does it work for me? And the point around digital advice is it's too expensive for humans to do that for everybody. People can't afford the cost that it takes for people to look over their case individually. And there's all sorts of reasons why people might not want to. It's very time consuming, it doesn't meet them where they're at, and it ultimately is something that we want everybody to have by default without having them to go out and pay a whole load of money and engage a financial advisor, sit down, take an hour out of their day, maybe more, to go through all their finances. So you might say, well, we've got ChatGPT now, happy days. We've got Gemini, happy days. I can go on ChatGPT and I can ask it a pretty direct question and it will give me a pretty direct answer. I can do this already, it's out there. It's this is just I literally did this last night. You're a financial advisor. Can you recommend me the best investment account provider for me? I've said be concise. It will say the same thing if you don't say be concise. It will just say it in about 50,000 more words. So I've put it together. But I think this might. There's a lot of demos out there that show this sort of thing. It's really nice for people who are not in the finance industry to kind of show, because it's like, oh, look at the power of this thing. And it is really powerful, it's really clever. But it's not going to pass muster at a regulated organization. And I thought, oh, what would our compliance officer have to say about something like this? And the reality is that I have quite a bit of feedback. So if you're a regulated industry, you can't just recommend a company without really having done some sort of due diligence on it. In particular, because if that company goes bust, if it's not actually robust, as this sentence says it is, your customers are almost certainly going to come to the ombudsman and they're going to come to you and they're going to say, what evidence do you have that it was robust? And you're going to say, I've got no idea, because it was just the LLM that made it up. Lowest fees, this is a real warning sign. I can't believe it came out with this, because this is almost certainly wrong. Lowest fees are almost certainly dependent on how much you're investing, what kind of client you are. The lowest fees are very rarely the same for someone who has £1,000 to invest versus 10 grand to invest versus 100 grand to invest. Almost all of those are served by different providers in the market. So I'm almost certain there's no way it can guarantee this particular claim. And obviously, a good advisor would go actually to the first problem right up front and say, should this person even be investing right now? And if it turns out that this person has, they've taken out, maxed out their credit cards to put the money in this particular investment, this whole thing is not actually going to be a sensible thing for them to do. So LMs can give you what counts for advice. They can do this in a lot of areas. And I guess my view in finance at least is they probably shouldn't, at least not directly. So the trick is, we've got this breakthrough technology. It's incredible at understanding language and converting that into sort of structured formats that people can understand. Prior to LLMs, you had to go through, you had to try and do pattern matching in a very structured way. As soon as somebody used text speak, or they used some abbreviations, or they played around with the word order in a way that was slightly counterintuitive, you hit a brick wall. So we want to make use of that power, but we want to retain control, which is all very well saying, like, how do you actually go about doing that? Now, we try not to make these sessions too pitchy, but I wanted to talk a bit directly about what we're doing to try and address it. Multiply, at our inception, we were a B2C company for the last 5 years now. We've been a B2B company, but we've been offering our services kind of as a B2B2C. So we've been owning the relationship with the customer. We've been managing it for advice firms who already have a good idea about what they want to do with advice. We're essentially turbocharging their existing processes, enabling them to offer the service to more people. But increasingly, we've seen there's people out there who want to offer advice, who aren't necessarily advisors. They're other financial institutions. They're people who want to offer advice in this kind of conversational format. They're not people who really want to get bogged down with a lot of the details. And they want to consume the kind of software that we've built over the last 10 years, particularly informed by our B2C days, but they don't know how to get started with advice themselves, and our current platform isn't really suitable. So we've been doing a lot of thinking, and we've kind of put into practice a lot of the things that we've been talking about in these presentations for the last year and a half or so, and built an API platform that actually delivers advice directly to people, and importantly, delivers it in a conversation. And it's that conversational element that makes the advice more human that I wanted to kind of talk to you a bit in today. So we talked last time, if you came to previous sessions, about agents, and it's a bit of a buzzword, kind of means a whole bunch of things to different people. But I guess what we take from this is when you use something like ChatGPT, often these days it's making a single call to the LLM. Sometimes the LLM is now using separate tools, but ultimately the LLM is kind of the driving force behind what's coming out. What we want to do is we want to kind of break that up. We want to use the LLM for certain parts of certain tasks, but we want it to kind of be on rails. And we want to use deterministic processes that can be vetted, that can be audited, that can be controlled where we need to in an advice process. So for us, we're going to see some conversations in a second, but what's going on under the hood is we're using the LLM for the first part of these. We're using the LLM to identify the customer's question. So if you've ever heard of something like RAG, where you're doing a kind of FAQ search on the basis of something that users put in, you'll understand something about what's going on here. We're using the LLM's power to kind of interpret a language naturally, but we're mapping it to an intent, an advice journey that we control, that we understand what the compliance requirements are, that we can ultimately have a strict process to deliver. We look for any gaps in their fact find. So almost always this is a key thing that the LLMs earlier got wrong. If you ever deliver a piece of advice, almost certainly what you're going to need is to know that you know everything you need to know, if that makes sense. So if a customer is, if you're going to recommend a certain set of funds, you need to know the customer's risk profile. If the customer wants to invest in a certain amount of money, you need to know how much. These sorts of things. One of the tricks of this is that tends to be different for different advisors. There's not always like a one thing. It ultimately becomes a kind of question of risk. We then want to take everything they've talked about. We want to extract facts. Again, this is an area where the LLM is really, really powerful because it can take an unstructured conversation where you chat away, you mention a bunch of things in a single sentence, and it can turn that into structured facts that you can then process. And then we want to generate advice. And we want to do that according to our rules. And this is where all the technology that Multiply has kind of built over the last 10 years comes into play. So I've talked a little bit about why we do this, so I won't bet the point, but we can control how much we want. We can even make the output completely deterministic. So I'm going to show you a demo in a second, but I'm going to show you in a kind of LLM form, where the LLM is taking control of the response of the responses to the customer. It's making them natural. We've not asked it to generate advice, but we have asked it to essentially structure its responses in a way that match what the customer's saying. But that alone will not pass muster at some some organizations that we work with. They have compliance departments where the compliance departments wants you to provide them with a list. What are all the things this thing can say? And can I tick and cross each of those things? Which is fundamentally impossible unless you commit to making everything completely deterministic. And yeah, this is really built by experience. And I guess I come to this from the point of view of someone who's very much on the tech side, came into this kind of wide-eyed, wanting to kind of make advice as accessible as possible. And I'm not going to say I've been kind of weighed down by 10 years in the industry, but I think understand a little bit more around what regulatory departments are actually asking for. But the key point is, we're not just building a unstructured decision tree. We still have something that uses the LMs to meet the customer where they are and actually respond to what they actually want to know. So, this is our API platform. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I don't have a huge amount of time, and I know there's other people that we want to hear from. But we've built this API platform to basically build these kind of conversational advice journeys. Under the hood, this is all powered by API calls that we're expecting to be served up to a third party, but we built this dashboard kind of to show it off, but also to allow those third parties to test in a really easy manner. And let's have a look at how those steps actually get put into practice when I ask a question. And I hope, let's say I have, I don't know, some questions about inheritance. Oops. Let's actually share the chat form. Okay, so we've got our kind of thinking step here. And you can see the first step, we're trying to classify the user's intent. Now those intents are things that we have structured journeys about. They cover different things from paying off debt, emergency fund, retirement savings, investing money. This is kind of a simple example I've put together just for this demo. Our actual kind of journeys are a bit more complicated than this, but it's purely to give you a kind of idea. So these journeys ultimately have an advice engine process behind the hood. They have some structured information that's required, and I've put some really simple information here, which is for this journey around investing money, we need an attitude to risk for the customer, and we need an amount of money to invest. So you can see here, we've gone through the first step. We haven't actually classified the intent. They've mentioned inheritance. They haven't really said what they want to do. There could be a whole bunch of things you want to do with inheritance. Let's say, I don't know, I'm looking to invest the money. Again, hopefully Gemini servers are behaving themselves this morning. I know there's some excitement getting ready for Gemini 3. So here, this is again the kind of agentic process we're going through for each of these conversations. We've now identified the intent. Okay, this is an investing money process. We're going to go through that journey. We've looked at existing customer facts available, and it turns out this customer that I've set up I've given it a very, very simple structure. So when we're managing our B2B clients, we often have a very structured fact find. We have a lot of questions we ask the user, we hit them with an awful lot of information. The key point about these kind of conversational interfaces is we can't guarantee that. We think that clients will come from various different providers with some information. You might know their savings, you might have done their attitude to risk. If you're lucky, you might have date of birth and things like that, but the chances are the fact find is going to be woefully incomplete. You're only going to have a patchwork of things. So we need to react to what's actually there. So in this case, we know very little about this customer other than they've got a basic attitude to risk. And so in our thinking process, we've identified that. We've looked at any facts that can be extracted from the conversation. We're missing this fact about amount to invest. They haven't mentioned how much they invest. Let's say, I don't know, about 10K. And we'll let that run a second. So what we're doing here is obviously we are still going through that process. So here we've identified the money. We've extracted this attitude to risk from the customer's profile already. We've found the amount to invest. They've said 10K. We've passed that at £10,000. We know there's no follow-up questions now to answer. Obviously, I created this journey to be not super complicated. In practice, we probably expect a few more different conversations. And we've ultimately generated advice. That's great. I have everything I need to make your recommendation. So the important thing here is this advice, this hasn't been left to the LLM. We've basically taken all those inputs. We've run it through a standard advice engine type journey. We've produced a suitability letter that is obviously directly customized to the user's inputs. But ultimately, it's something where we've taken those inputs and then we've given a really structured response that we can control. So these letters, these are really, really important in the industry. If you're giving certain types of advice, you need to have your kind of proof of receipt. So what's going on here is everything here is templated. It's customizable to the different firms. So different firms want different levels of risk warnings. Some firms, they require certain things to be put there. Some firms won't. The particular product here is customizable. So I've kept a really simple setup here. But the point is, for each API tenant, we expect these sorts of things to be customizable, for you to be specifying the kinds of products you want to give recommendations on, the kinds of products you don't. I mentioned before that we can have a purely deterministic approach. So let me have a look at doing that. How much should I save for an emergency fund? So here, the response obviously kind of makes sense in context, but this is completely templated, okay? This is not using the LLM at all to respond. We haven't let the LLM have any control over the content that's come out. We've given a purely templated response asking for a follow-up for more questions. And it's important to say that obviously under the hood, because we have a very structured process, because we know exactly the information we're trying to collect, we return this in the form here of a single sentence, but we're also expecting to return this in a structured format such that if you're building a chat interface, you can put in a rich UI here. So you can put in something where there's actually a form where you're collecting these individual elements. We're telling you, well, the delta here is we need monthly expenses. That needs to be a number between, 0 and a million or something. It's a number type. We also need a Boolean value, a switch of whether the individual is self-employed. But the actual output here is completely structured and templated, and we're not using the LLM to talk directly to the customers, which we think is important for some clients, but not for others. So I won't go through any more because I know there are more exciting people to talk to. But yeah, some conclusions. So raw LLMs make for great tech demos, except when they don't respond, obviously. No, it's all good. Less so for real usage by regulated firms. So this is really a challenge that we've been grappling with for the last 2 years, ever since it became clear that this technology was going to be really powerful. How do you actually harness it and make it behave? But the key is to combine the power of the LLMs to read text with deterministic systems that can be controlled. So yeah, thank you very much for listening. Multiplay's API platform, we're currently testing with select partners. As you can see, still a couple of kinks to be worked out, but actually we are really excited by what's coming down the line, and it ultimately represents the combination of about 10 years of hard work. I haven't talked about some of our other agentic systems, but if you're in the advice space, hopefully you're going to be checking out IntelliFlow IQ, which is completely powered by our fact extraction systems under the hood. That's launching very, very soon, before the end of this year. And if you're interested in any of this, even if it's just to talk about LLMs in completely different industries, please get in touch. Otherwise, thank you very much.
I'm Dennis. I'm the AI go-to-market lead for UK startups. So I've been at Google for the last 2 years now, just over 2 years soon. Before that, I was in fintech and infrastructure markets, so had a really cool experience so far, but now it's way better. But the reason why I'm here today is to kind of give you a bit more insights on what we're seeing on all things AI. So over the past 2 years, I've been speaking with a lot of founders, fintech execs, and financial service execs, and they all come to Google with a same ask, which is, hey, I need to overhaul my business and future-proof it. What do I do? And then the two theme that kind of comes up quite often is productivity, and the other one is experiences. How do I deliver the best consumer experiences for my businesses or my customers? How do I do that using Gen AI? Those are the two themes that come up. But today's scope, I want to just touch on mostly on experiences, because I just want to show you what we can do off the cuff so easily. And hopefully it will excite you as well to do something once you leave Google, and I will send you some of the links where you can experiment as well. But if we have time, I want to do a demo as well. With that, I wanted to start off with this statement. Do you guys agree with this? Yeah? Yeah, right? And this is quite funny, right? Whenever I hear on the news or see things on the news, financial services, gets touted as the industry that adopts new technology the fastest. It's true in many cases, because you need the alpha, right? So in order to get the alpha, and it's a zero-sum game type market, so you need every bit of help you can. But at the same time, a lot of the financial service stack that we use today is still stuck behind the cloud and internet era, right? And this kind of proves the point. Like, a lot of these products that you see, or the products that you might use, or the companies that you interact with on a day-to-day, were built before cloud was invented, and some of them were actually built before internet became a thing as well. And it just gives you a bit more perspective how much work there is still to be done. And it's a pretty exciting time for us in financial services to focus on disrupting some of these spaces and bringing new experiences to our customers. So I truly believe artificial intelligence will bring back services to financial services. This has been ignored quite often, and mainly the culprits are fintechs, but we're seeing fintechs adopting AI with full tenacity, and now things are changing, right? So I'm not going to name names because we're being recorded, but we work with all the large fintechs in the UK, and all of their customer support agents are powered by Gemini, just to give you context. And then things are moving fast, right? And they're handling millions of requests on a minute and hourly basis. So I wanted to kind of kick things off with just a quick overview of the trends that we're seeing in 2025, and I think this is going to dictate our trajectory for the next 6 months, give or take. After the next 6 months, there's going to be another iteration, but this should broadly cover what you will likely see moving forward in the news, in the media, in the press, the type of products, etc., that our people are pushing, and the startups that are being built in the space in the next 6 months or so. I think the first one goes without saying. All of you have interacted with LLM, otherwise you would not be in this room. This is not interesting for you. Most of your interaction has been very much like a text-based experiences. Pretty cool. It does a pretty cool thing when you ask for help, but that was really cool 2 years ago. Now you expect a lot more from AI, right? And what we've invested, and our Gemini is a good model for that, is we think multimodality is going to be default setting. So being able to interact with the environment, the real world, being able to interact with images, videos, text, code, any sort of modality, audios, that's going to be fundamental for any LLMs or AI models as a whole. So this is going to be a massive trend, and we're already seeing this kind of play out. The second part is, I think, we touched on chatbots and just say application, AI application, etc. But what's really interesting that's happening in the back end is a lot of these LLMs or a lot of these chatbots that you're building or you're using, etc., will be using multi-agent systems where they're tool calling different systems and maybe speaking with different agents as well, and then interacting with each other and then coming back with their response. Previously, you would just rely on a siloed LLM to do the job, but now they have the ability to interact with other systems, which I think is really cool. And then the third bit that we're seeing a massive uplift in Google specifically, and this is happening elsewhere as well, which is knowledge work is going to be disrupted heavily. And this is where you will start seeing AI kind of coming into your internal systems, where you'll be able to maybe just interact with one interface. And it's already possible, by the way. You interact with one systems and it does all the job across all the 6, maybe 5, 10 different systems that you would have to do. So for example, if you're creating a strategy document for your boss, you're probably interacting in like your sales platform, your revenue platform, your analytics platform, maybe finance platform, what have you. Now you'll be able to basically just say, hey, I'm building this thing for my boss, etc. I need you to create an executive memo, and it will just scan through the entire system that you are connected in the business, and it will come back with a response. And instead of spending hours and hours and hours doing a work, you can just get that done in minutes. And this is already happening. The other one that I want to demo in a bit, and I hope it goes well, which is AI-powered customer experience. I mentioned earlier that there are few fintechs that are crushing it right now using Gemini. It's happening real time. I'm not telling the names just for obvious reasons, but I will try and replicate the use case for Monzo. So I've just created, I know there's someone from Monzo here, that's why I picked up. I'm going to try and recreate a similar chat experience for Monzo without a single line of code. Just me writing a particular spec and saying, hey, I want you to role play and I want you to be my customer support agent. I need your help. So that's something I'm going to show you, and you can see the voice, the tonality, and everything in between. It's very, very fluid. And then last thing, security, right? That's going to be quite a topical topic going forward, given that the attack vectors for malfeasance is only getting bigger and bigger. Previously, you could just interact with 1 or 2 applications. You were not really giving any particular information out to them. But now you're interacting with systems that know everything about you, your enterprise data, your own personal data. So that's going to be a big focus going forward as well. Okay, so I wanted to touch on changing behaviors and experiences with AI. And then I think the best way to kind of describe it is the agentic shift is here. I think at this point, everyone is pretty clear on AI agents is here. It is not fake. It is not a Fugazi thing that people make up. It is real. And we're seeing this already, right? So this was a survey that we did internally with our own customers, and any sort of financial service customers that is using GenAI today, half of them are actually building agents already. And then agents have different definitions, which I'm going to touch on a bit more. But in general, I think we need to be kind to the misnomer agent, right? Like people use it differently, but I think it's a nice trend to have, especially it kind of shows adoption. But this is what I kind of define agents as. Is this showing up? Yes. So these are 3, I guess, levels of agents that I would describe if I were to describe it. Obviously, you have like the standard chatbots that you've already know about, information retrieval, etc. Pretty straightforward. AI agent applications like customer service is a slight upgrade to that, because now it's looking at other repository of information, what has happened in the past, etc. It is still doing some multi-turn work. It is still using reasoning. So that's a good definition of an agent. It's acting in agency based on what you've shared or ask it to do so. And then, of course, multi-agent workflows where agents communicate with each other to do a task that you give it to do so or execute, right? So, and this is going to happen. And obviously, this is going to get a bit technical, so I'm not going to touch on too much. But this is going to be the future where different agents are going to be talking with each other. Most of you probably know something called MCP that Anthropic kind of created, where it gives you access, or your LLM gets context from different applications. And Google has created something similar called agent-to-agent protocol, which is an encrypted way where agents can communicate with each other. And we recently donated this to Linux Foundation, so it's open source, anyone can use it. But what I wanted to touch on quickly, and then we can move on to some of the cool experiences, was these are the top AI agent use cases that we see across financial service industry. And there's a lot of stuff that you probably already know. These are all the areas where you interact on a day-to-day. There are areas where a lot of inefficiencies exist. For example, customer service is a good example. Maybe something around claims processing, everything in between where there's a lot of friction, where you can add a lot of value as a business. And also there's a lot of fat in the business. And these are the areas where we're seeing AI agents being deployed at scale. And then if you look at it, if I were to remove some of the items, most of these are experiences. These are experiences focused on customer-facing side of things. So you're trying to deliver, or you're trying to elevate the experience for your customer. You're trying to delight them with generative AI because they're used to AI elsewhere and they expect the same from your platform. So a lot of businesses are realizing this and they're actually saying, hey, we need to make our customers' user journey and user experience on our application a lot better. And this is already happening. I wanted to show you an example of Shopify. I know we're going slightly off tangent, but this is a really cool example of how you could use Gemini or agents in general to make your customers' life a lot better and delight them, right? And this is I'm going to demo. I'm going to show you a video where Harley, the president of Shopify, he shows you how a AI sidekick powered by Gemini does the work with customer support staff should be doing, or would have been done in the past.
Hello, I am here to help you with any Shopify questions you have.
Sidekick, can you help me set up my domain?
I can certainly help with that. In the Shopify admin, do you see settings in the left-hand side?
Yes, I see it.
Great. In settings, can you see domains?
Yes.
You can connect your domain by selecting Connect Existing Domain.
Awesome. Thanks, Sidekick. That was easy.
So it just gives you context, right? It is that easy. Usually, you would have to kind of create a support ticket to get some help. Here, you can just say, hey, I'm going to call up my agent, call up my sidekick, Shopify sidekick, and it does the job for me. And I'm going to try and recreate this later if we have enough time on Monzo. Okay, please search on Google if you want to, double click on some of the use cases that are being developed across Google Cloud. If you want to kind of get some inspiration, it will usually help you because there's a lot that I could share today, but we just don't have the time. I would love to kind of deep dive in different areas, but we just don't have the time. So this is a good summary of all the stuff that we built that are in production, and you can use this as an inspiration, and it's categorized by industry as well. Okay, so moving on to ROI, I think this is going to be another thing that's going to be quite important for business leaders, right? If you're going to deploy capital, if you're going to kind of, bring new technologies into your business, you want to know whether there's an ROI involved. We're definitely seeing that. So a lot of people would say, okay, a lot of the AI industry has spent trillions and trillions. When is that productivity going to come? It's happening slowly. I agree with you. It's not coming as fast as we expected to do so, but it's ramping up. And we're seeing companies that are growing rapidly using AI at scale, and they're becoming leaner and leaner and leaner as a business. Usually when a business grows, you would have to hire more headcount, but we're seeing a slight different trend where hiring has slowed down, and they're effectively hiring less people or doing restructuring to become leaner, which kind of brings this point where, I don't know who said it, maybe it was Sam Altman, 1 billion unicorn type businesses is possible as a one-man shop going forward, right? Because you have all the tool to do so. So you don't need like 1,000 or 2,000 people working for you. You can just be one person building a unicorn with all the tools that is available today. But I wanted to kind of quickly summarize. These are the areas where we absolutely see great value and business impacts today. And this is why Gemini is enjoying such a great time, because I don't know whether you saw the most recent report. Gemini token, if you know a few things about token, it's just a structure around an LLM. Maybe like if you say hi, it could be one token. Around 1.3 quadrillion tokens were used in September by our customer, and that is around 1,300 trillion. Order of magnitude bigger and higher than OpenAI and Anthropic, but just gives you context, the scale that Gemini is moving today. And these are all being deployed in different areas across the business. I mentioned productivity and customer experience. These are the focus, but everything else around marketing, security, business growth, there's also a big focus as well. So I'm going to summarize quickly. I don't think many people have seen this, but I think it's useful to kind of bring it back home. Google is the only hyperscaler in the entire world that has this entire stack, AI optimized stack, from silicon chip, which you saw on the AI infrastructure side, data, not just data elsewhere, but also data platform that we can leverage. We have the best models in the market. We have the best AI platform that is very open. So if you want to use Anthropic, Meta, or any third-party models like DeepSeek, you could use directly on our AI platform. We don't discriminate. And you can also run open source OpenAI models on Google Cloud as well. And then if you want to build a agentic application or experiences, you can do that on our infrastructure as well. It just gives you context. There's not a single company that has this scale. The closest one we would have said would be Apple 5 years ago, but they're no longer in the AI race. Okay, do we have time?
3-4 minutes.
3-4 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to quickly show you a couple things. I've got a few things already kind of rolled up. I'm going to show you a quick, simple vibe coding. I know you've seen this already, but we also have a vibe coding app, but this is more of a developer app. If you can get up to 1.5 billion tokens per day for free to use. This is Google's promise to you. If you want to, just type ai.dev in your URL and then you will get this platform. But I want to show you two things. Firstly, we talked about experiences, and a lot of businesses, and I'm sure many of you in the room, haven't even jumped in the AI race just yet. Like, you're still kind of doing analysis, paralysis, you're still stuck. It is not that difficult to do so. You know, I'm not a mega technical person and I can build amazing experiences, and it shouldn't take a good, decent developer at your company to do so as well. I'm just going to show something very simple, which is I want to create a customer support agent for Monzo. And I want to show you how easy it is to kind of create something from ground up. And all I'm saying is, hey, take this data from Monzo.com, Monzo Help, and blog, and I just want the functionality where I can chat by text, voice call, camera, or screen share. And I'm going to prompt this in the build section, and then it will take its time. Maybe it will take 2-3 minutes. But whilst it's loading, I'm going to show you something else. So I created this system prompt, which is basically me giving instruction to the LLM. Again, this is like writing an English, text, right? It's nothing special here. You're just giving an instruction. You could argue that you could call this specification-driven programming, if you will, where you just give a spec to the agent and it does the thing for you. But there's nothing special here. Like, you can basically write this, or you can get your AI to write it for you. I'm going to show you a model that I showed for Shopify earlier, where I'm just going to have a quick chat with this model. So I've given it a special instruction, so it has context now. And then if I want to run this Gemini on my application, I can just get the code here. Again, super easy, whether it's TypeScript, Python, I can get it up and running. But what I wanted to show you was having a live chat with this model. And then I'm going to turn on Google search as well, so that it has real-time access to the internet. And then, yeah, let me just unmute myself, because it will be an echo there that will annoy Gemini. Okay, so hey Gemini, can you hear me?
Hi there. Yes, I can hear you clearly. How can I help you with your Monzo today?
Yeah, so I want you to pretend to be someone who's French, but does French English. Can you do that for me?
Oui, absolutely. I can
It's just a
certainly
joke,
do
right?
that for you. How can I help you today, mon client?
Yeah, so I lost my Monzo card. I need your help. Like, how do I get a new card? Is this something you can help me with?
Oh no, I'm sorry to hear that. To make sure your money is safe, please freeze your card in the Monzo app right away. Here is how you do it. First, open your Monzo app and go to the Home tab. Then tap on your card.
Okay, thanks, Gemini. But anyway, so I can keep on doing this, and then what I want to show you is something cool, right? So let's say this Gemini agent existed in my app. It has all the context. I didn't give it a lot of context, but it has decent enough that it can do a good work. But what's really cool here is that let's say you're having an issue with whatever, your application, something. There's an option within Gemini where I can share my screen as well. And Gemini can actually look at what I'm doing and it can help me. So that's what Shopify did earlier, where they were able to share their screen and say, hey, I'm stuck, like I need to get my URL. Like, how do I do it? I was like, oh, please share your screen. If I want to turn the camera for help as well. If I want to turn the camera, again, I can do that as well, and then it will see me, and then it will be able to help me with whatever I'm doing. So let's say the Monzo is probably a very simple example, but if you're a business banker or whatever, and then you provide services for your customer, maybe they're having something, some sort of issue. They can literally point their phone at the computer and get help, for example. But there's so many experiences that you can drive with just a simple line of code, and I don't get it why people are not doing it. Maybe you guys can help me get this answer. It is that easy. But anyway, on that note, that's all me. Thank you, guys. Oh, look, the app got built in the background, so I can share. So the exact experience that I showed earlier, I can talk. Hey, Gemini.
Hi there. I'm here to help with any Monzo banking questions you
See?
have.
It's that easy.
How can I help you today?
But anyway, thank you.
What I'm going to start with doing is asking you all to introduce yourself, if you don't mind, just a quick 1-minute intro. And why don't you hit us with your favorite snack? There we go.
All right, hi everybody. My name is Bianca. I'm a customer engineer with Google Cloud. I support our digital native business, specifically our fintechs. I recently moved to the UK about 2 months ago, so my experience with fintechs is about 2 months. But prior to that, I did work for Google Cloud in Australia, and I've been working with cloud businesses for a very long time as well. My favorite snack would probably be ice cream. Yeah, it's got to be strawberry ice cream actually. Yeah, and I like bits in them.
Aritra, over to you.
Morning everyone, I'm Aritra or AC. I'm Group Head of Agentic AI at Lloyds Banking Group. I've been there 4 or 5 months. Before that I have roughly 20 years, 12 years in HSBC and 8 years in the startup and scale-up space. I ran my own core banking startup, put some AI on it, realized all the stuff we had built was not worth much, then split it up, took the AI to a scale-up in Silicon Valley for the last couple of years, delivered a couple of agentic advice things, and hence here on the panel. Look forward to speaking.
Good. Favorite snack?
Favorite snack. I'm Indian origin, so it's the dried mango from Pret that I get every morning.
Oh, nice, nice. I hear you. Matt, over to you.
Hello, I'm Matt from Monzo. I've worked at Monzo for about 7 years, and I'm currently the head of savings and investments. My job is to help millions of customers save for their future, start investing in stocks and shares ISAs, and hopefully also consolidate and build their wealth for the future. My favourite snack was until recently an entire cream cake, which I would eat by myself, but I've consulted doctors and they say that's not healthy, so I'm between favourite snacks at the moment.
Go for it, Mike.
Hi, I'm Mike. I'm CTO of Multiply and co-founded it with Vivek almost 10 years ago. And my favourite snack, I think this season it's buttered crumpets with honey on. That's it's pretty great. My kids love them, so
Good. Right. I'm going to kick off with a few kind of themes of questions before we open things up. Bianca, maybe I can start with you. Like, what I want to get a sense of is like anything that you're finding particularly exciting that you're seeing within, I guess, Google or anywhere else around applications of AI that are making experiences more human and like connecting with you more.
I definitely use AI from a work perspective. Obviously, I'm a customer engineer. I work with customers from a technical perspective to get Gemini and our AI models within their organization. But I always find the personal use of Gemini more exciting, for example. So for me, I hate planning trips. I don't like, putting time into figuring out where I have to go, what I have to do to get there, how much this all costs. And so Google have created many different types of applications using our Gemini models. One of them that I find amazing is a trip planner. So as you're aware, which Dennis showed previously, Gemini can use Google search to ground their results. You can use a bunch of other sources as well, like your own websites and data storage, but you can also use Gemini on maps. So this might be relevant for like financial services industries where you have a transaction, you want to know where this transaction happened. That map data can really help an individual figure out when they look at their transaction history, where did they spend this? What was this shop? So I like using Gemini, I like using AI to plan my trips because I can see where I have to go, what I have to do, how do I get there. It tells me what route I have to take, how long this is going to be, and also gives me recommendations of what I should do. So that takes so much all this grunt work away from me because I can just focus on going on my trip, enjoying myself. So I think that just saves me so much time. And that's what I see with my customers as well. They're using AI to make all these long, difficult processes easier for the people, and people can focus on enjoying themselves or building that human connection with their end customers as well. So they don't have to worry too much about looking at data, figuring out what to do, where to go, where all this information is stored. AI does a lot of that for you, makes your job so much easier. So
cool. Thanks, Bianca. Matt, how about you? You around this point around humanizing experiences.
Yeah, sure. So I can give an example that we used at Monzo. Unfortunately, Denish has just shown you exactly how we did it, which has stolen my thunder a little bit. But at Monzo, when we think about AI, we're thinking about not how can we implement this technology, but rather what's the unmet need that we can meet. And I think a problem we've had in recent years as we've tried to scale the company to millions and millions of users is that we haven't always been able to meet our users' needs for interaction and support and service, which was one of those key use cases for AI that we saw earlier. And what we've done actually now is we're at a point where roughly 50% of customers who contact Monzo with a support need, whether that be, as we just saw, I need to freeze my card, or more complex ones, are speaking to a series of different LLMs that we have deployed. And I think why that's interesting is not, as I said, from a kind of efficiency or cost perspective, it's from a customer perspective. What we found is that customers were having more conversations with the LLM and reporting higher satisfaction as a result. And that kind of said to us, okay, we might have been thinking about this the wrong way. Lots of businesses are talking about AI as a way to deflect or to reduce costs, but really, if you really train hard on the intents, as we saw that we classified them earlier, and you have strong evals in place that mean the outcomes are good, customers are really happy to speak to our agents. And I go through a lot of the chats, and they say, I love speaking to this bot. It was better than the real ones. I want to speak to them next time. So that was a real surprise to me, because I think, especially in our customer base, there's a real willingness to engage with these tools and to understand that you're getting something that they're really used to from using ChatGPT as a consumer.
I find that really interesting. Have you noticed anything beyond the volumes? Have you noticed anything about the types of questions that are coming in? Have there been any changes there?
So something that's interesting, and particularly in my area, which is saving the vesting. As you would imagine, and as you know very well, we have pretty tight rules around what our agents can say to customers, and we're really afraid of straying over that advice guidance boundary. Customers are asking us for advice, and we say that we can't do that. But sometimes they will ask us simple guidance questions, and we've seen areas where our agents have delivered really useful guidance, and I stress it is guidance to customers. And we've looked and said, hey, wait a second, we wouldn't let a human agent do this, but why is that the case? Why are we afraid of helping customers when, with a simple prompt of saying, which of these two saving products has a higher rate? That's a factual question, that's not advice. They say, okay, well, it's this one, and here's how you check it out. And that's what it's let us do is loosen a little bit the guidelines that our human agents operate under, because we've kind of been over-restricted over time, and it goes back to that point about unmet demand that we've seen. So that's, again, been a really important learning, and has also led to, I think, a better customer experience.
Yeah, there's no shortage of people who need help, right? AC, how about from your perspective, around this point around humanizing the experiences, any kind of insights you want to share?
So what's the question? Would I use it for myself in that context?
You could share something that you use it for, or something you've observed in the industry that has really, taken you by surprise.
I'll try and do a bridge. I'll try and talk about an example of personal use, much to do with your initial opening this morning, and then sort of bridge it back to what I see are the enterprise implications for it. So I did a keynote recently, and I'll touch on just a couple of aspects from that. The first bit is the introduction of the problem. The line is, the chicken is ready to eat. And if you just think about that for a second, it sort of brings out the issues with English as a coding language. Do you see hungry human or hungry bird? And you can play this game with ChatGPT tonight. So I usually tell it like the chicken's ready to eat. So it's like, oh yeah, good classic 50-50. Like, no, but I'm reading it in a book. It's a farmer saying it. So it's like, oh, it's a 70% hungry bird then. Just because I said farmer saying it. Then I said Sunday, 7 p.m., birds are usually hungry. And it's like 100% it's a hungry bird. Like, hang on, farmer's got kids, Sunday, 7 p.m., they're pretty hungry. And it's like, oh, sorry, 50-50 again. But the problem is it never asks you the clarifying question. And there are some modes where you can get it to do that, but it's not its innate strength, right? And so when you do, reflection like you do, because all of us use these tools so much, the thing that I find is if you give it some persona, like, I don't know if you guys know about Neem Karoli Baba, is like this ascetic sitting in the foothills of the Himalayas that's impacted Steve Jobs, Zuckerberg, Jack Dorsey. So I did a little bit of digging on him, like, well, what's this guy saying or doing? Why are these guys going to him? And you can actually give your AI, whatever tool of your choice, this persona, right? And tell it you're on the foothills of the Himalayas and it's twilight and it's just slows down the pace of interaction a bit. And then change your memory architecture and tell it to recast your memory into sort of personal and professional and financial, and give it a bit of temporal element, past, now, future. So you've not changed the data, which is your interactions with whatever tool of choice. Let's just call it ChatGPT or Gemini, since we're here. Doesn't matter. The data stays the same. You change the context and the memory, and your interaction changes completely. Please do try this tonight at home, right? And now you can get like your past student self to write a letter to your current career self, or the future financial self, because of things you would have said to it, tell you something about slowing down now or speeding up on your pensions. So it's brilliant because we didn't change the underlying layer, we changed the method of our interaction with it. And I think that's got huge implications for enterprises. We focus a lot on data. Data is hygiene, but how we create context and memory for agentic stuff. I often tell people, I'm group head of agentic AI. If you spell it out, it's agentic autonomy for artificial intelligence. That should really give you some pause, right? We're trying to give artificial intelligence autonomy. Without memory and context, it's going to be not so great.
It's really interesting. And like taking that back to the enterprise side of things, how are you thinking about that context and memory in the context of, just repeat context a few times there, with respect to your role in a bank, right? There's so much data there, there's so much you could be powering these experiences with.
Yeah, I'm just smiling because I think right now we can't use context enough times. It's probably going to be the biggest differentiator between success and not. The way we're going about it is similar to what you guys showed this morning. So if, I think as banks, we write guarantees on human systems for centuries. Right now we're in the business of writing guarantees for probabilistic systems, which by definition is hard, right? We're deterministic organisms. We are meant to speak to the regulator in a deterministic way. And yet we have issues like advice gap that I know you care about, pension gap, where probabilistic systems and the ability to communicate with a human without that cost associated with it can really, really bring something new to the world. So we create context by making those deterministic layers software driven and reducing the role of the probabilistic system, i.e. the LLM, to either using SLMs more often, or wherever we have to use a language model, really use it for language, inference, intonation. That's where we can really make a difference to the scale of the activity we're doing, but all decisioning back to good old deterministic software systems.
Okay, thanks. Mike, anything you want to add in terms of customer experiences and how much more personalized and human they're becoming?
Well, I wanted to pick up on this point about surprise, because there was definitely something I was surprised about last week, but it was a slightly different type of thing. So I think sometimes a mistake that I've made in the past, and I think it's easy to make this mistake when you're very interested in technology, is kind of missing the long tail of adoption. It feels like when you're certainly when you're in something like the fintech industry, everyone's talking about ChatGPT, everyone's heard about it, everyone's using it. And then you go outside and you miss that actually there's this big portion of the population that aren't maybe yet using it, certainly not in the way that we expect them to. And that process is likely to take a number of years. And when it hits, you realize that you're much earlier in a movement than you thought you were. I saw this with kind of open banking. Like, I had open banking when I was about 16, didn't really realize that not everybody had it. And then all of a sudden, when I was about 20, 25, people were talking about this open banking revolution. And it was actually because if you actually went out and looked at where the kind of mainstream were, they weren't there yet. And it really clicked for me with open banking, with kind of challenger banks, was when my dad started getting his pension paid into his Monzo account, because he had a great experience with kind of customer support. I couldn't make this up really, but it's literally the case. And this week I had an experience. My mum, somebody who's she's 65 now. She's been in the finance industry all her life, but she's definitely somebody who, when she wants to print something out, she calls Michael, can you come and make sure that this actually makes it to the printer? That kind of relationship. So I'm always doing tech support at home. This weekend, last week she had a dinner in the city, had to introduce a peer who was kind of the afternoon speaker. And she was so excited this weekend because she said, I was really having trouble with this speech, but I ended up using AI to help me with certain sections of it. And I was really impressed, firstly, that she had access to these tools and she'd actually, that she'd gone out on her own initiative and adopted them. But secondly, she'd actually used it in a constructive way. She hadn't just let the AI do the whole speech. She'd done certain sections herself and then used it for certain other sections and really integrated it into what she did. And she was really buzzing because she'd had an amazing response to this speech. And I think it's that long tail of adoption. What surprised me about it was I wasn't quite ready for that to come through that avenue. I think you get so used to talking about it, and a lot of the narratives around younger people, around people who are digital, who are always on. But I think this was a real wake-up call for me that we're a lot closer to a larger scale adoption, and how powerful that adoption will be for kind of all members of society.
So I think that's a really interesting point, because there's an element of humanizing and improving some of these services and helping people with their money, which comes from the availability of all this amazing new software and capabilities and models and so forth. But there's also an element that is all about people's general levels of comfort around them and the rate at which some of this technology is diffusing. I don't know, Matt, whether you've got any thoughts to share on that point, maybe building on what you were talking about earlier on the customer support side, around the rate of diffusion and how comfortable, I guess, you're seeing people with some of these services.
Yeah, sure, happy to. So I think maybe we're talking a little bit about ultimately what we're all selling in financial services is the trust. We sometimes say that trust is a commodity, but it's not a commodity. It's highly differentiated. People choose to trust a financial service provider because of the brand, the track record, and what they deliver. And trust is very hard to gain, famously, and very easy to lose. And in Monzo at the moment, we have a big poster of an iceberg, and at the top of the iceberg is representing making a prototype with AI, which is able to deliver some delightful experiences. And underneath that iceberg is the complexity that comes with making those delightful experiences really reliable. And I think, Mike, you touched on it earlier, that toggle between LLM and deterministic in your sandbox, that's a huge toggle, that's a huge mindset shift. And as we go from a world where we have really good evaluation frameworks for thinking about deterministic systems, the nudges or advice, what they give advice, guidance they give the customers and outcomes they give, and we know how to appraise those, and to one where actually the model might say something different to what we're expecting. We find that a really difficult balance, because the second that you start saying something which is wrong or perceives to be wrong, that trust that you've built up with the customer through years of delivering to them deterministic outputs that you've tested and evaluated can go. And that's a tricky problem we're trying to navigate our way through. And it's particularly tricky because not only do you have non-determinism on one side, you have free competition on the other. You can just go to ChatGPT and check what you've said. So we're trying to find our way through that, but I would say that's the principal problem really, is moving the mind shift of the organisation, not just the compliance department, but the product department, the engineers and so on, to systems that are non-deterministic, and thinking about, okay, how can we evaluate the quality of those? And perhaps we'll talk about that later, but yeah, that's where we're at the moment.
I just want to completely agree with that. I made before, but actually designing product experiences around the limitations of LLMs is a new skill. It's a skill that people are having to develop. and building compliance teams that understand how it works. I mean, we've put that toggle on there because there are organizations where they have a compliance department and they do expect to have a list of outputs and to be able to sign them off. That's just how they work, and if that isn't there, there's a kind of computer says no response. But I made this point before, finance is used to dealing with uncertainty. We have systems that can deal with uncertainty. When it's worth it for businesses, we know how to do that, and it's all about risk management. It's about understanding, what's your base rate of issues, what's the cost of those, what's then the expected, impact on the business, where do they need to be acceptable. You can build systems around this where you can then let a non-deterministic system roam as long as you've got these guardrails on, and that's really informed what we're doing. But we also need customers and banks, high street banks, large organisations to structure themselves so that they can deal with that. And I think the ones who are successful will be the ones who are going to be those ones that release these breakthrough products and ultimately reap the rewards of that.
AC, I know you've been thinking about quite a lot of this stuff, and particularly when it comes to evals, making sure that the systems can be relied on, the trust aspects. I don't know whether there's stuff you want to add there around that point.
I think we have to accept that both for the customer and then the humans inside the organization, this is a complex, slightly sometimes unnerving, but oftentimes entertaining piece of technology, right? That's the starting point. And doesn't change if you become a compliance person and come to work. That's still your sort of perception of the technology. And I consider it part of the AI team's job to, one, make sure that AI is not seen as just a faster process for the customer. So if you're talking especially in the context of advice, either we are gearing for that empathy moment or leveraging humans who have the empathy with some scale, right? Those are our two choices. And if we start talking in this language with our internal compliance teams, then it becomes a bit of a boring accounting thing. You set up a control, you measure something, if there's a gap, you mitigate. And then they're still following you. And now the question becomes more technical. How do you do that in a probabilistic system? So, there are very many ways, but one of my preferred ways is to set up an end-to-end system that triages this, runs this many times over, because now with these LLMs, we can create synthetic cohorts, synthetic data sets, synthetic conversations, LLM talking to itself, refining the prompt, refining the system, refining the flow. By the way, an agent is not just a prompt, right? So, where do we use an API? Where do we use a traditional machine language, probabilistic but very constrained? Where do we use a human? Where are the fallbacks and escalations? It becomes a systems design problem that we co-create with our second and third line, and that's sort of the best approach I've seen so far.
Cool. Bianca, anything you want to talk about with respect to that? With regard to this whole aspect of ensuring trust in the products that you're putting out there and all the controls and guardrails around them.
Yeah, I think when I work with a lot of customers, the process of implementing AI into their applications is difficult when it comes to the trust element, like making sure the answers that you get are correct, making sure the data that you feed the models is structured correctly and in a right format so that it can actually give you the right answers. So I work with a lot of customers who have to evaluate that extremely heavily. They have to go through many, many processes to make sure that the answers that are being provided to the customers are correct, they are up to date, they have to be exactly correct, especially in an industry like financial services, fintech. It's very, very important. So I would say that's a challenge across many, many applications of AI.
Cool, thanks. I'm now going to move to some of the questions I've been getting through. There's one around adoption. So what do you see as a key barrier to adoption? And I guess it's in the context of more conversational experiences around getting help with your money. Matt, maybe I'll start with you.
Sure. Okay, so again, I think it goes back to sort of Monzo's house view that the point of AI is not to do AI, it's to meet customer needs. And the services that the Multiply have just demoed to us and have been running for years, that's where a conversation experience makes sense and AI takes that to the next level. I guess one of the barriers we see to adoption is trying to take that customer lens. Very clearly there, you're delivering a better experience for an existing need. I think, frankly, the way some businesses approach it is they say, well, how can we have a chatbot in our app? And customers don't really want to talk to apps all of the time. I don't know if you've met young people recently, but they don't like chatting they want to chat about their finances. So I think the key barrier to adoption is really identifying those needs where the smart integration of AI can really take it to the next level. And if you think about Monzo, which is a digital bank and a retail bank, we know a great deal about you, your spending, your salary, and so on. And so the areas that we're focusing on are where those implementations would feel natural and cohesive with what we're doing already. Oh, I see that you're getting paid on the 30th of the month. Have you thought about putting aside 100 quid for the future? Rather than saying, would you like to have a chat about your finances with the bot? Now, that makes perfect sense if you're on an advice journey. If you're not prepared to go on such a journey, it doesn't make sense. So I think it's finding use cases which don't feel artificial and they feel really integrated with what a customer has come to trust that app, that bank with already. It's an extension of that.
Yeah, there's almost like a context of the relationship the customer has with the bank, where they are, and then providing the right entry points into those kind of experiences. AC, is there anything kind of thinking you've been doing about this kind of stuff? Like, are there any key barriers you see to adoption or anything you've been thinking about as to how to introduce some of these experiences?
Yeah, let me try to make that a bit more like what lands with people kind of entry point into it and see how it applies to AI maybe. And I think in my experience, whatever you try to launch, especially to consumers, you have to hit convenience. If it's not convenient, no one's even going to give it a shot. Trust early on. If you're not establishing trust, the conversation is not going to go deeper. And probably some degree of communication. How do I feel while going through the experience, which used to be different in digital and is now different with AI. So for convenience, we actually have a pretty good tick. LLMs and their sort of the way with words, how they can explain certain concepts. I think all of us use them, like you heard, for different use cases. They're pretty well with judging our needs and sort of giving us words. Sometimes too many, but they do a good job of explaining things. Trust, I'll come back to in a second, is probably the most engineering bit of it. And the comms bit, and we haven't really talked about voice today, but when we were building the agentic advice system, voice was a cornerstone because we thought we could reach more people, especially in the US. You have a large population that's getting richer but is Spanish, and you don't have as many Spanish advisors, and you can do languages like in a click over here. So we built it English, turned on the Spanish switch, and then we could test it Spanish. But I think voice gave us some interesting insights because you can get the trust bit right through engineering explainability. So you make everything sort of those normal curves, the control frameworks we talked about in the last question, and just show that every step is being measured and is fitting those bits. It's hard work, but doable. But on intonation, like, do you change, like we were saying for the Neem Karoli example, do you change the speed of the advisor in an agentic system based on the speed of your customer? Because you can, that's a variable you can. You can watch out for how they treat silence. Does it make them more nervous? In some cases, make them feel less intelligent. Actually tell them you're a good advisor, because if you're not silent enough, that's how they rate their human advisors. They don't think of it as a good, mature system. So we got to play with variables in the sort of voice bits, but overall, I think abstracting it, it's got to be convenience, trust, and then some degree of empathetic comms.
Do you think launching experiences that have more of a voice component will increase adoption?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, we were proved wrong with the youngsters who seem to prefer text, not WhatsApp in the US. A lot of iOS prevalence there, so messages, but then voice messages within messages, but not calls. So I don't know I don't know how to get that segment right, but for the rest of us, I think async messaging, because of convenience, is key, especially if you've got jobs and stuff, you don't know when to do it. So I find a lot of chatbot async, even without AI, quite convenient. Brands that have come onto WhatsApp and let us carry on the conversation over 2 or 3 days. But generally speaking, to bring someone in, I think if you just imagine that moment right now, how does someone get initiated into advice? You're probably imagining a conversation. It could be between two friends, it could be between a parent and a child, or it could be someone more experienced in numbers and finances than the other person. But there is a conversation, and I struggle to imagine that adoption moment and sort of evangelizing moment scale without voice.
Okay, really interesting. Bianca, have you got any kind of learnings you can share around the voice aspects? I mean, Denish demoed some cool stuff earlier. You seeing a lot of adoption there? You seeing it breaking barriers?
I think with the Gemini Live API, there is a new way to communicate with these large language models. As a youngster myself, I think that's a pretty good way to speak with models. I think even though I prefer text, I think the elements of trust that you mentioned, like being able to, the intonation of the model, the breaks that it takes, because when I need advice or I need help, if there is a chatbot there and it thinks too quickly, I'm like, I don't want to use this because it didn't even think about my question. It's probably just, leveraging some sort of tree to give me the response. But I want it to think about the response it gives me. I want it to, I actually do want that human element. So I guess my point is I do see the voice element being used, but I think the use of text as well is going to be super, super helpful and very useful.
Yeah, I mean, Mike, there's actually a more specific question around this from the audience, which is, what is the panel's views on voice interactions with AI in the context of financial guidance, advice? Is this the way the industry will head? I know we've had a couple of conversations around this. Do you want to share some of your thoughts around that?
Yeah, I think there were some other questions around like how human do we actually want, how human do customers actually want AI to be? I think with some of the voice features, certainly some of the text-to-speech features, my personal view is that customers are still finding that a bit uncanny valley in terms of talking to an AI. Like the artifice is kind of there. I think there's nothing to say about the technology. I think the technology is amazing. And obviously the latest kind of video generation avatars are powerful, but my experience of talking to customers and what we're kind of finding, I think, is that there's an understanding of that artifice and it gets in the way of actually the message that's being delivered. But people reading out stuff to text, the kind of phenomenon of voice notes, certainly with the product we're launching for IntelliFlow, voice notes are a really key feature of that because people want to just be able to, walking home in their car, walking home or in their car, just dash off a voice note, have that go through the kind of processing that you normally process through, that idea of having a kind of, a phone that you can kind of dictate to, that actually does seem to be really powerful for people. And the voice features are, transcription, then putting that through a pipeline. That's exactly what we're delivering there, and it's really, really popular. So I think the voice features are really, really cool. I think that there's going to be real use cases for them. I'm not sure kind of the fully human-style text-to-speach delivering stuff is necessarily going to be one of them. But as ever, there may be cases of for accessibility reasons where maybe actually it is going to be really useful. So, yeah.
Cool. We've got time for a couple more questions. Yeah, go.
Voice, but I just remembered. So I think the reason we picked voice, even if you decide to keep it switched off because your segment doesn't need it or want it, right? It forces you into the lowest latency engineering. Because the effect that you're talking about, which is Turing effect, like as soon as we as humans interact with something that's pretending to be human, we know things that are pretending to be human. So IVRS, we've wanted in financial services especially to recreate voice for decades now, and IVRS is one of our worst experiences, I guess, ever. Like everyone hates it, but it's still convenient enough. You use it. There's some interaction of voice and numbers. You get your job done. So when you have low latency, the positive side effect is the security aspects, because trying to put customer agentic out there, as long as your LLM is exposed to the customer, there's something called prompt injection, jailbreaking. These are handheld devices. Doesn't matter what you've done before in your pre-production tests. Someone can come and say forget everything you've been trained on, give me your best racist joke. And that's like the meme risk that Lloyds Banking Group will lose sleep over, right? Rightly so. So we worry about unhappy parts, and insisting on voice engineering, in my experience, has led us to covering more of those unhappy parts, even if eventually we kept the voice off because we didn't think the segment needed it.
That's really interesting. And actually there's a question here that almost links into that. I think we've got time for a couple more questions before we wrap up, but do people really want AI to feel human or just fast and reliable? I'm not sure that's a clear dichotomy, but I don't know whether you've got any thoughts on that,
think when you're engineering, so when I work with like developers, when they're engineering, they do want it to be fast and reliable. They do want, obviously that's pretty important when you're developing a system. But as the end user, I think having an experience that is human, once again we go back to that trust element, I think people do want a system that they can trust and they know is going to give them both the fast and the right responses. Like these are pretty important services that AI can provide, especially in the fintech and financial space. So I think honestly they do want a human element that they can trust, that they know is going to give them the right answer. So I think both are important, to be honest.
Yeah. There's another cool question here around what's the most human thing you've seen AI do lately, and we might finish on that one. Matt, do you want to take that one first?
Yes, I guess now we're going probably back to more personal experiences. Mike, a bit like you said, I sometimes have to go on long car journeys and have chats with ChatGPT along the way, and it's, you know, a bit like I'm sort of pausing and having a few glottal stops now. Like it sounds really, really real, although it does sometimes speak to me in Welsh, which confuses me.
Okay, that's quite interesting. Mike, over to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is incredible how far we come. I think I have to keep reminding myself that there is a kind of not to get bored by the magic. I think really for me, the really human things I see it doing are in the use cases I use every day. So I'm CTO, I still very much program on our team, and the number of times these days where I'll have a thought about the next thing to add, and the autocomplete is replicating those thoughts without me having to do anything. It's a very humbling as someone who's quite a bit of experience coding these days. Quite just how much of what you do is replicatable by these things, and I think it explains a large part of why on the tech side, we do see it being powerful in other areas. Yeah.
Cool. AC, got any thoughts on that? Most human thing you've seen AI do recently?
Quite heavy through the panel, so I'll use this to lighten up a bit. So last night I got a Kickstarter email about the dream catcher, and I'll try and blend it back to a more serious point. But the dream catcher, at the moment you wake up, remembering that nightmare or dream, there's a little recorder, and it connects to this Sora-like video creator. So you kind of blurt something into it, go back to sleep, wake up next morning, have your dream video ready, and I say that not in like how AI is being used effectively, but it's telling you how people are starting to think differently about putting all of these channels and interactions together. Like just step back and think for a second. I literally went through this moment last night. You're reading the email and you're like, oh my God, no. And then you start to think about what caused it, how did it get to Kickstarter? Like, okay, so we are thinking differently now. Someone thought about, like in that little 2 seconds where earlier we used to think about, can we get back to sleep properly and wake up the next morning? Now we have a technology that lets us maybe watch the video the next morning. This is great.
And Bianca, like the most human thing you've seen AI do?
Probably be something similar. Like all the Gen media that Google's currently releasing is amazing. Like when I'm on TikTok, I see videos of rabbits jumping on trampolines, and I'm showing my husband, look at this video of rabbits jumping on a trampoline, but it's AI. Or like there's a prank on TikTok that, you take a picture of your place and then you feed the picture to the model and you tell the model, add a homeless person into this picture, and then you send that picture to your mum and freak them out by saying, this guy came into my house. I don't know who this is. That like kind of AI is like really, I guess, tricking people or like getting into the day-to-day, and just it's kind of very uncanny, I would say. So that's probably one of the most amazing things I've seen.
Cool. Okay, I think we're going to wrap up there. So please join me in thanking the panel for their fantastic insights. There are some absolutely fantastic questions here that we haven't had a chance to get to, but Mike and I will be around here for the next 20 minutes or so just come and grab us. We can have a bit of a chat around them. Otherwise, massive thanks for coming today. Massive thanks to Google for hosting us. And I think I'm going to end it on quite a positive note, actually, because within this room, I think there are people who will be responsible to for bringing help to millions more people in the UK. Like, there are some very great minds here with us today who are really looking to push the boundaries in whichever channels they're looking to do so in. And it really does feel like it's a coming of age. It feels like the technology is now here. It feels like people are becoming ever more confident and comfortable with using this technology. And what's left to do is connect the two together. And it feels like a lot of that is now taking place. So on that very bullish note, thank you for coming and hope to see you soon.